I was being challenged by some people like, why do you have 4 men on the panel? I've done more than 100 events since I came back to Singapore 10 years ago. And every single one, I made sure it was not just gender balance, it was actually ethnicity balance as well. But this time is because if you look at the screen over there, the previous episode number 3 was all female. And there is a strategic reason because, when women leaders come together and they talk about that, they didn't talk about men. So, but there was a different kind of a unity and unison and point of view. And I thought that I would honor the Old Boys Club. Most of our podcast panel are people that are definitely not friends with each other and they meet each other for the first time. But today is an exception. So was the last one. So they actually met before. But today we're going to talk about things that we didn't talk about during the beginning. Right? Even though we had more than 3 hours in the dinner. So again, thanks to Singapore Global Network that I was able to gather C-suites to have these kind of executive lunches and dinners. Interestingly, they're just normal human beings like any of us. And we had very, very interesting conversations. It's very personal. Today, maybe they have to dial a little bit back on the personal side. So we may save some of that with Q&A. But definitely, a lot of people also ask me, what is the topic today? I want to talk about what do you think is the forecast of your industry? That's not really what the podcast is about. So I really want to bring the more human side of things. So now, if you're ready, we shall begin. Podcast Peerty is a very unique concept because I really don't want to do what other people did, which is just interview someone one-on-one. And then for 1 hour, honestly, I doze off. Right. So really not so exciting. And so that's why I said, why not we have 4? And it's candid. So they didn't rehearse. They didn't have can we meet together and synchronize what we're going to say? There's no such thing. So I'm really putting them in the spot. They're all brave, so they will weather the storm. So the first act is called the bet. So my question would be, really, I want them to cover, what is your biggest bet right now? Not 10 years ago, not when you started your career, but right now, right? Anything under the sun. Could be geopolitical, it could be very personal, could be anything in between, could be related to your company, it could be related to your, what is your biggest now? Just chime in on each other, just like we did at our dinner. And feel free to disagree as well. Over to you.
Who want to bet first? Okay, so I can start. We did not prepare. That's very true. I think particularly interesting in such a volatile moment. So because you could say it's not really the right moment to bet, right? Because who knows? And inside that, my perspective on, what is the right bet for us, ourselves, maybe also for the people working with us, is in the area of curiosity. Because as it happens, we get to have a lot of more tools to get to know something from someone else or for the machine. And the genuine curiosity is a bit at risk of disappearing because the answer is somewhere. You need to click and you get some kind of answer. But the real curiosity, which is beyond just kind of understanding or having some level of knowledge, curiosity about, for instance, some insights, the background of the people on a situation, that fascinates me. And I think it's something that connects also the generations somehow, because of course, so I'm in my life, so I get to be super curious about the new things that come up. But at the same time, I think the young folks, they think they can know it all because they have access to everything. But there is something in the experience of people who have been in the business for some time that, regardless of technology, remains very meaningful to make sense of things. So that, to me, is the currency and the value for today, tomorrow, curiosity.
Look, I fundamentally agree, and as kind of a strap line to that, I think it's the time of the entrepreneur. I think we are now facing a opportunity that the world and the population has never seen previously. I think the utilization of adoption of technology like LLMs and AI, and I'm sure we're going to come on to that to some degree, to help to drive value and capability has never been anywhere near it where it is today, and the opportunity to do that going forward. An example of that, we can, somebody can scale and build a business in weeks compared to years with minimum capital. So I think the big bet is actually personally backing yourself to create the side hustle that you always dreamed about doing and actually make it happen, because the tooling exists today, which will do all of the heavy lift and all of the education process to be able to create value and equity value for yourself. So it's something I'm doing for myself as well. But I think as, obviously folks know I work for a bank and I'm not going to tip shares or anything else like that. But I think that the major bet is the wave of the entrepreneurs, and there'll be the small percentage that grab that opportunity and seize it and drive it forward, and there will be those that won't. So to completely agree with you, that's where your curiosity becomes reality.
Yeah, I'm actually go somewhere in between. So I'll pick up from your provocation first. So I have actually two of them. And the first one is actually a very contrarian thought. I know we all talk about AI and all kinds of stuff that AI can do, and the risks of job losses and the opportunities of actually doing things better than yesterday. And most of us sitting in the room, actually probably all of us sitting in the room, have gone through at least a couple of massive technological advancements at a point of time in our careers. I can safely tell you, when I started off selling soaps and detergents for Hindustan Lever in India, we didn't have laptops to actually tie up our daily sales numbers. We literally actually did it on a piece of paper. And we believed at that point of time that world would actually sort of replace thinking. My contrarian view completely is that the power of curiosity and creativity is going to come back like anything in the next 2 years. Far more contrarian. I don't believe even slightly in these mega IPOs that are going to happen in the next 15 days. And that's my provocation.
They'll happen.
They'll happen. But I genuinely believe that the power of the human mind, unless we stop believing in everything we've led in all our lives, can be challenged. I think that's fundamental. You well put it, very, very close to what we both do, which is about consumer insights, and call it curiosity. And I fully agree with that. My second one, I think, is related but not related. I think AI is not the only thing that's happening disruptive, good or bad, at this point of time. The other one is geopolitics in our lives. And my bet is that the world east of the Suez Canal is really going to drive the world forward for the next 30, 40 years. There have been times in our lifetime when it's been a China century or a China decade, an India decade, perhaps a Middle East decade, though that's in question at this point of time. Yeah. But I think a collective of all of those is going to power humanity forward in the next 10, 15 years. That's my bet.
Interesting.
It's got nothing to do with any science behind it. It's just my feelings.
But I fundamentally agree with that. I think Asia is from a demographic perspective, from a scalability perspective, from domestic risk, from emerging market, from equity valuation, is going to be a driving force, and I dare say for 40, 50 years plus. Yeah. I think if you look at the geopolitical risk that's been created in the West over the last couple of years has only supported that growth and development. And if I look at investment flows now, and if I look at where investment is moving, there is definitely a de-risking exercise that is happening outside of the S&P, which is obviously supported by 7 tech stocks. So be wary. But I guess for me, there's also the other underlying factor as well is the dollar has typically been the currency of choice for global trade.
True.
And we're already starting to see 2 areas. Digitalization of currencies, so it's CBDCs and how central banks are thinking about that. We've seen China start to build rails for the yuan as a digital currency. And we start to see trade flows happening outside of the US dollar flow. It's a microcosm of the overall trillions that are moved daily in US dollar, but it's a start. And I think for me, if you're going to think about big bets, I completely agree with you. I think Asia is going to be the driving force for capability and capacity over the next 34 years. Plus, if you think about population growth as well, which is definitely stagnating in the West. It's a key concern for Western governments, Europe, UK, and obviously the Americas. And you don't see that issue particularly happening in here. So I think there's lots of upside in these markets, which is why Singapore's my home.
I love that. So I'm going to probably pick on the themes that you spoke about, both curiosity and innovation. And for me, I think the one item that we're not speaking about enough, whether it's in schools or universities or the workplace, is around skilling. And the way I look at it is that the world will probably get divided into those who are really leveraging AI and technology and those who are probably not. I don't think it's going to be AI versus human beings. It's probably going to be AI with human beings versus AI without human beings. And for me, I think I get really worried about the people who are coming into the workforce right now, whether the formal education they've been getting, whether it's in the schools or the university, is really setting them up for success. What needs to fundamentally change in our education system? What is the tripartite conversations we need to be having a lot more between the governments, the university, the private sector. But also you look at the workforce transformation itself. We talk about, whether it's people early in their career, people late in their career. We have to start doing this in a much more focused manner as opposed to it just evolving over time. And of course, having a teenage son, I really worry about what's going to happen to him when he gets into university or workplace. But I really feel we need to be putting in a lot more focused effort just on skilling it.
I just wanted to add something very complimentary to what you said. And the use of AI and technology to actually drive and upskill is a far better way of looking at it than actually using it as an adversary.
Yes.
The reason I kind of said what I said is because when you actually look at the last 30, 40 years, when for a variety of reasons, I think the pervasive things about the generation probably after us has been looking at screens.
True.
Yeah? So everybody's worried. Screen hours, screen time, everything, all the kids, everything else. And I'll give you a corollary factor. Yeah. The pieces of great literature written in the world in the last 20 years have fallen by 90%. 90. That's a staggering number. There are no more great books being written. There are no more great stuff being created. And again, there perhaps maybe no connection between the two. But I think whatever we will do with technology, we should not let generations lose the power to think. And I think both of those go together. They're not against each other. The sooner all of us, and this just doesn't go for younger generation. One of the thoughts that actually came to my mind was actually to go and train as an intern in an AI company for the next 3 months. But that apart, but that's what is needed. I think both have to go together. So completely agree, Mayank.
Fully aligned. I think, in fact, I feel you touched upon important point on creativity. It's not just, I think, books. Even if you look at the world of music, the world of entertainment, that has been disrupted and transformed so much. And the thing that worries me a lot right now is even when you look at human to human interaction, that has fallen significantly. In fact, I think Financial Times did a podcast a couple of weeks back where they were talking about how birth rates are falling significantly. And one of the reasons is no one is actually stepping out and meeting people as human beings. It's all through either, some app or everyone's kind of occupied with their own social media. So that I think that human interaction and the importance of that human interaction will come back because more of us will just realize, hang on, there's a world just 6 inches above our screen that's far more interesting.
I hope that was provocative enough, Chris.
I didn't really properly introduce everybody, but I hope by now you have a sense that Mayank is from Microsoft, so we'll check questions and so forth. And Alexander is from Barclays, so the banking and finance people mostly sitting opposite me. And Vijay worked in healthcare for long time. Well, not healthcare, consumer health.
Consumer health for last 9 years, yeah.
Long time. Did you notice the Ferreros on your table? Yes, we have more. So please help yourself to
Consumer enjoyment.
Okay, cool. I'm big on knowing them as humans rather than how they built their career. You can check that on LinkedIn and definitely please talk to them after that. This is the time, one of the rare chances I can get them to be really vulnerable. And Chatham's house rule, please do not quote anybody. Feel free to talk about what you learned from the session, but do not say who said what, right? I want to maybe get you guys to be like really human and tell us a moment where you are really proud of and maybe a moment that humbled you. It could also be a major screw up. And, why did it matter to you? And what is it? Like maybe some battle scars that still not haunts you, but keep you sane, right? Keep you on your toes, so to speak. So could we maybe go into the peaks and the valleys of your career, your life, your journey thus far? So go as way back as you wish or as current as you like.
So Can I first just say, I think you mentioned about major screw-ups and personal feeling. I think that it's really important to have those screw-ups in life, at least in career, because you learn so much more from the screw-ups. And sometimes I feel like if you haven't done them, then probably you haven't experienced. I think for me, the sweetest part about my career was going back early days. And I think it's like that first win, that first sort of, deal that you crack. And I still remember this was back in London, and we'd been working on this major deal and transaction for 18 months. And the satisfaction of finally closing it and winning it after having worked 18 months and having your stamp, you know what, I did it. It was almost like that, seal of confidence that you've achieved something in your career. No one can take that away from you. No one can ever take that first victory, that first win from you, and something that you've truly, truly worked on. And one of the humbling moments was, this was fresh MBA graduate. You walk into the world thinking, I'm going to start at the chief exec and work my way down to the shop floor, because you kind of go into this world with a lot of confidence. And of course, you kind of get punched in the gut, when reality hits you. And I still remember where my first boss took me to the side after a meeting, and he said, look, you think you're really smart, you think you've got a lot of great IQ, but unless you really work on your EQ, you're never going to get anywhere in life. And I think that there are those life lessons which you never forget. I still remember the actual meeting we were having, the moment this was given to me. And since then, it's been always stamped EQ greater than IQ. And I've also seen so many people like me. And sometimes I feel like just knocking them on the shoulder saying, look, you might think you're the smartest person in the room, but unless you work on your EQ, doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. So
I agree. I think EQ is, when I'm hiring, and I only typically do senior hires, I never hire on technical skills or intellectual capacity, because that's, by the time it's got to my table, it's a given. It's actually self-awareness, EQ, balance, pragmatism. And I think the scarring gives you resiliency. And I think resiliency as a leader is critical, so that when the waters are choppy, and the boat is rocking and the crew are looking at you for how you navigate those rough waters, you've got it covered. And I think that's when leaders step up. Leaders are not there when times are good, but I think when times are good, leadership's okay. It's easy when business is booming. But it's when there's a problem, when there's an issue, when there's something existential that's going to happen, that's when leaders need to step up, and they carry the firm and they carry the people with them. And I think that scarring that we've all been through helps you to do that in a very calm and balanced way. You might be churning inside, but the exterior shows strength and confidence, and also that vulnerability to say we'll be okay. What I'm most proud of actually is 28 years in banking with one bank. Having survived one firm in my industry for 28 years, trust me, that's deserve a medal. But I think for me, the most humbling experience is quite recent actually. So as I've alluded to, I've got a few side hustles. So I'm non-exec of a fintech company, and I do some advisory pieces outside of the firm, particularly in fintech areas, helping companies raise equity and credit and so forth, all disclosed within the firm for conflicts of interest. Anyone from compliance here. But for a startup I've been working with in India, actually, it's a trade finance vehicle. When we had to go and raise equity for the first time, my word. So I'm 28 years, investment banking. I've raised billions of money all over the world. It's the brand. Obviously it was me, but it's really the brand. And when you have to go out with your begging bowl to investors and trying to basically ask, and we're only asking for $5 million. It's still a lot of money, but to start us off. And that was the most humbling experience I've had for such a long time, because you have to learn so many new skills. You have to iteratively define your narrative. You have to find the right script, find the right investor, and then bingo, it happens. And we did. We raised the equity and the guys are flying now. It was a great, but it was so hard. And then for people to turn around and say, no. I sat in I remember in the Four Seasons in Mumbai, sat with one particular VC, which I won't mention. And we sat there around this same coffee table, and we had 4 or 5 VCs just rolling up and rolling around. And there was one, I think they sat there for 5 minutes and went, thank you for the coffee, and just left. It was so tough. But yeah, so you talk about humbling experiences. That was most certainly one where the brand is gone. and it's you as an individual, and it's your talent as an individual that shines through. And it was these guys that did it. I was just there to support. But when that talent shines through, that's both a real moment to be proud of, but also a massively humbling experience.
Have you found a difference, things like raising money or the brand, harder in Asia versus Europe? Or
You mean for my job, my main job? No, not at all. No, but raising money for startups and stuff, for sure. For Western money, well, particularly for India, Western money into India is a tough gig, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. There's dollar rupee depreciation for the last 10 years, which is you're never going to get over. Plus is that risk, plus is about understanding the market. So I think Western money in, but there's so much liquidity in Asia.
Yeah.
Plus it was my hometown, Mumbai, where if you work, I guess, for a few years, you can work anywhere in the world. I've worked for about 28 years, and there's been a collective of about 10 years out of those 28 years that completely leave a mark on me. And those 10 years are 7 years in Russia and 3 years in China. So in many ways, probably my top 20 of humbling and not so humbling experiences are all within those two places. Yeah, I'm discounting London and then Singapore and Mumbai out of all this. Yeah. So actually, if I talk about something that has a deep impact on my life as well, is actually managing my team, my office and my people post the 24th of February when the war started. Now, I used to manage both Russia and Ukraine. So that's a slightly fascinating position to be in. I'll kind of summarize this in a few ways. Wars and anxiety does strange things to you. I really don't think that any B school in the world actually prepares you for it. Before I get into the story, I'll tell you something strange. Okay. So 24th morning, this is about 4 a.m. in Moscow, and Shilpa, my wife, actually wakes me up and says, hey, do you know these guys have invaded Ukraine? And then I actually turn around and tell her that, hey, I think we should sleep for the next 5-6 hours because I don't know when we're going to sleep again. So that was the starting of it. But about the 4th day, we were actually moving families from Kiev all the way across the border to Poland. Yeah, families, not individuals. Okay, and there was a jam on that entire highway, and I know those highways well, from Kiev to Lviv, all the way across the border. And you had to be in touch with people, etc. I had situations where we were not able to trace people, for example, in Ukraine. By about the 10th day, I was speaking to my country manager in Ukraine, and he was in a bunker, and I could hear shelling every day for the next 2 to 3 months. By about the 10th day, we did not know how much of money we had because most of the ERP systems were sanctioned. We had to rush around and open bank accounts exactly for the same reason for everybody in our Russian office, in a Russian bank, so that we could pay people. On the other side, ATMs in Ukraine stopped dispensing money. So the families were moving across the border to Poland and they didn't really have cash. Thank God to just about everybody on the planet, in the company, my counterparts on the other side, that we actually had to move these families who landed in Warsaw and were staying at the homes of our employees there. By about the 15th day, and the reason I'm talking about this is because most of the expats in Russia, in Moscow, had been called up by the embassies and they had to kind of leave and stuff like that. I've never seen such high fares in my life as they were from Moscow to Dubai and Dubai into capitals of Europe. And by about the 16th day, we're actually figuring out how to actually air evacuate all of us. Now, all this banged into, because at that point of time, no one actually knew when this is going to end. The reason I call it a peak of my career is actually building on your point. I mean, it's the EQ thing that actually every of those nights was coming into all of us, the leadership team in office, and just telling each other, hey, listen, let's stay calm. Because if we don't stay calm, it's going to be a massive issue outside. And it's a collection of all those things that actually adds up to that. And I have, therefore, a lot of sympathy for all the people who are going through those anxious moments now in Middle East. And I don't know, with the geopolitics of the world around, where else? Those few months that actually sort of managed my team, and hats off to all of them, actually. Some wonderful people. My lowest, actually, and it could be the reverse, humbling, was actually when I moved to China. And for exactly the same reasons as you said. So I don't think there are two countries as different from each other on the planet like India and China. India is creativity out of chaos. By the way, Shanghai and Mumbai have nearly the same amount of people. But if you stand in the middle of Mumbai, you'll probably find about 1,000 people around you. If you stand in the middle of Shanghai, you find no one around you. I mean, even the geographic areas are the same. So either people in Shanghai stay at home all the time and people in Mumbai always outside. I mean, I love my country. Yeah, to actually a society where things are very organized, very organized. And by the way, that comes in interactions as well with people in office. And I can assure you, for anyone who comes from anywhere else, the collection of the first 6 months in China is a humbling experience by itself. You kind of go through stuff where you probably need to figure out that a no answer actually is a good answer at times. You hear phrases in China, like all of us tend to quote from mythology once in a while from our part of the world, but in China, it's very regular. A lot of things are spoken in idioms. Yeah, a lot of them, starting from the days of Confucius, for example. So you hear someone come and tell you, hey, Vijay, you know, I don't think you'll be able to cross the water until you feel the stones. You know, so I like kind of go back and tell myself in the evening what really happened. It's a wonderful country, but humbling for anyone. Certainly for someone from India. I landed in China from London, 4 years in London. So it's not necessarily just India behind me. So those are the two places I can sort of tell lots of stories about.
There is no story after yours. But I think where I want to pick up is what is impressive in stories you're telling is the element of intensity. You've been through extremes, and that is by definition defining and moments where you have to step up and you get changed forever, probably. If we think about most of the lives we go through, I think there is an element also going to the EQ and the self-awareness piece, which is to understand how small moments can also be defining and rich in insights and learnings. Because sometimes we don't take care enough about the small mistakes or the small achievements to build on a bit more self-challenge or confidence. And being able to capture that in the small conversations, so maybe not as cryptic as the one with the stone and the reef. So I think it's important to always be in a posture of capturing that. So when you're very young, it's very difficult to understand when you can say you have achieved something, unless you have a very clear signal that the deal is closed. But you need to build confidence also on a daily basis, because if it's not every 18 months, then, you know, it's going to be a bit dry. In the same way, you don't have to overlook too much. The small things that are being shared, the feedback, the, you know, benevolent or malevolent, but how do you build on that and try to get better also based on that? And one experience that I have in that more kind of more typical office life was the relationship I was trying to have with a very senior guy in my organization. And I was struggling a lot, and I did not struggle so much with people interaction. And I was convinced I was right from a content standpoint, but I just was not understanding what it, you know, needed in terms of connection and understanding of the counterpart to push the idea, the concept through. And it's a bit back to what you were saying about you can have small ideas, but if you are not able to put it in the right way to that specific audience, 1 person, 10 person, a boardroom and so on, then you're going nowhere. So also that those walls you kind of gently hit somehow can also be a slap in the face, because you can do the wrong thing as well when you're young. You need to make the most of those moments. You need to reflect about that. And what I'm trying to share also with the guys, especially the young folks on my team, to work on self-awareness, is to be in a posture where you observe the situation in an objective way in anything you do. You have a presence that has this element of, okay, what happened, what did well, what did not well, and how can I adjust to that? Not just being focused on only what you need to achieve and transactionally obtain. So yeah, I think what is interesting is that because the scars, you can have big scars and you cannot do anything about it. They are so visible, they will stay with you. But some of the small ones may be more hidden and can be extremely powerful in the tough or less tough moments as well. Because they remind you of some maybe small situations apparently, but that are very rich with insights.
Can I, you mentioned about confidence and small things matter. And I've actually begun to appreciate that a lot more in the last few years of my career than I probably did early on, because now I've noticed, like, when you're young in your career, you're trying to network, you're trying to showcase your capability and whatnot. And you do realize, like, talking to senior leaders, it's not easy. Trying to get access is not easy. Now that I'm fortunate to be a senior leader myself, I've noticed that when someone is trying to get access with you, someone is trying to pitch an idea, or someone is trying to network or show, they just want to be visible. And you do realize, like, a small gesture, whether it's positive or negative, does have a massive impact. And, you'll be surprised on how uplifting, at the same time, how it can knock someone's confidence off. Like, you're in the elevator and someone says, hey, you know what? I'm so-and-so, I'm in your team. And if you just are dismissive at that time, oh my God, it's just going to ruin their confidence. But if you just take a second to thank them for their doing, it really uplifts them. I've begun to notice that a lot more now than I probably did, 5 years back, 7 years back, because you were part of some rat race, or you were trying to, just get around in the world. And now you realize, hang on, just take a moment and just thank, and those small gestures make so much of an impact.
Yeah, I do. I think it's the incremental that massively impacts teams that work for you or the broader population. And I think, there's an opportunity when you're a leader to give back, but in an authentic way.
Yes.
I don't think it can be contrived.
No.
And I think there's lots of leadership events, network events that happen, and they're so contrived and not genuine. They're disingenuous. And I think it's what you do individually. So how authentic are you as an individual? How you think, how you reward, how you challenge, how you check, what you do, what you give back. I think it has to be critically part of you. And whatever vehicle you choose to make that work for you is the best. It's got to work best for you, but work best for the people themselves. And because it brings across that authenticity. And because this triggers a little anecdote for me, I got in a very early stage of my leadership journey, I got given 2 pieces of advice around giving back. And I still do this to this day. So I always do handwritten notes to folks that have leaving the firm, joined the firm, or have got some award or promotion or something like that. It's not much. It's a small card. I have them printed in Mumbai, actually. Beautiful company. There's a great company printing them over. And by the way, that's not one of my side hustles. I'm not trying to sell those cards. It's the center of the universe. And but I write a handwritten note, and it was a piece of advice: write a handwritten note, because those few words will last forever. And as Churchill once famously said, I'm sorry I wrote you a long note because I didn't have time to write you a short one. So writing just a few words makes so much meaning. And I still have people today that have left the organization that I contact every now and again, and they still remember the note. And I think that's just a wonderful touch of authenticity. And the second piece is, on a Friday, I still do this today. I genuinely still do this today. On a Friday, ring 3 people. Email, call 3 people from your contact list that you haven't spoken to for a long time, and just connect. And I can't tell you the difference that makes. And it's former colleagues or people you used to work with, and you just say, hey, how are you? And I just think, again, just you bring that authenticity to people, I think it just makes a massive. So that's 2 big leadership things for me, and I still do that internally.
Yes.
And I think it just makes such a massive difference about showing who you are and what you are from lead. And I wish I knew this 20 years ago when I was in my 30s, right? I wish I knew all of this. It's just because it makes such a difference to your career to actually give back and do.
What was interesting in this story is why you decided to pick those advices, because 10 people can get the same piece of advice and maybe only 1 or 2 will get to do something about it. So why did that trigger the behavior?
Because it was so different. Because it was about it. Because most of the advice that you get in your younger career is about how you win a deal, or how you do this, or how you get that promotion, or how I think about me. This was actually about some other people. And it was the first piece of genuine advice and I'm sure all 4 of us have had numerous mentors and coaches and exec coaches and everything else therein. It's those 2 things that made such a difference, because it was about what you give back. And also as well, candidly, and I've only genuinely started to see the value of this. So as you get older in your career and you progress and everything else therein, you're experienced and you have great knowledge and capability across all of our different industries. But the biggest value you have is your network. Your network is your equity value. And actually, not by design, but by default, those cards and those phone calls have enabled me to build a phenomenally strong network, which I'm now using in a host of different ways. Because those people that you used to work with as a junior that have moved on, they're now running businesses or companies or managing directors in other banks or whatever they're doing in the world. They've gone on to succeed and do. And your network is your equity value. And if you give back, you know, one day it comes back to you.
There's something that you said which sparked a thought, which is having you of course been in extreme situations and you've kind of led people out of war zone. And it always reminds me that there's more to life. We are so consumed by work, by what we're going to do next, by a schedule. And I always try to remind my team saying, guys, always remember there's more to life. There'll be another deal. There'll be another quarter. There'll be another financial year. There'll be another customer. But you need to just remind yourself that, you know what, there's a larger purpose. There is much more to life. And
Always.
I love what you said, because at that moment, you know, whether you would have sold 1 million more or 1 million less, doesn't really matter.
Doesn't really matter.
And the other thing which struck me was these were still people who were working for a major consumer company. Without getting too philosophical, but imagine the ones who didn't have the support from someone like you. Can't even imagine what they would be going through.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. For me, that experience, more than anything else, I think all of us have gone through our dosages of learnings in life, especially in the corporate world, pluses, minuses, coaches, otherwise mentors. But I think if you go through a deeper situation, it actually it kind of questions your meaning in life. I mean, that's probably, till that point of time, and it's about 4 years now, someone came and asked me, what is it that you really want to become? And I would have probably said, a Fortune 500 CEO or a partner somewhere or, whatever. If someone today comes and asks me, what do you wish to do in about 10 years' time? I'd probably turn around and say, I want to give back to people from where I came from. It might be different for different people, but it probably won't be a very individualistic, selfish ambition. It clearly kind of alters that. I think for a majority of us in this world who lost near and dear ones, it was COVID time, where a lot of people that we come across in today's world actually had a lot of suffering in those days. And you see their mindset a bit different and attitude to life. I at least know of 3-4 of them. And so I think it does things to alter.
So, actually, you guys triggered something that I remember. When I was maybe only 22, my regional boss called me stupid. And even though I come from the best school in Singapore, and definitely, even when I was young, I was a very confident person. I actually like that because it humbled you, and you kind of begin to ask, what's so stupid about what I did? I think it was to be so lucky to get it at the age of 22, be provoked and triggered to know that you may think you're the smartest, but in the eyes of somebody who is very important to you at that time, you're stupid. And it made me a lot more detail-oriented after she challenged me. Right. So I think sometimes it's a great thing to go through those kind of battles last. So the last part is what I call the price of global leadership. It so happened, sorry to say, it wasn't intentional. 4 of them are not completely local, right? And they have been, even if they've been relocated a couple of times. So really, what was the price you paid, right? I left Singapore at the age of 23. I came back at the age of 53. So there is a price you pay for ambition, for what you want, for exploring the oyster, so to speak. In your case, it's coming to my home country, and always welcome. I'm one of those Singaporeans because I think the debate on LinkedIn and the Singapore society is a little bit ludicrous, because what happens when we go to some other country and we take their jobs, right? So how can we say someone come and take our job? That part will be screened out of our thing. But this is something I feel very strongly about. In fact, 70% of my angel investing syndicate are from expatriates that are based in Singapore. So I am definitely the number one person to vouch for a more diversified society. Actually, it's one of the reasons why I was willing to come back to Singapore in the first place. If Singapore had not changed, and if Singapore were the same Singapore that I knew at 23, I would never have returned because I was very sure I was never returning. So, thank you for being here. So I guess my question to you would be this relocation, you coming into Singapore, some of you maybe came to Singapore, went off and then came back again. What was the price and what was the kind of conversation you had to have with your close partners and your loved ones? What did it cost you, right? Nothing is pure gain. So what were those times where you had to make some tough decisions? And I'm sure you also had very strong supportive spouses. Behind every successful man is a strong woman. Behind every successful woman is a strong man, right? Or a supportive man, maybe. So therefore, over to you guys again. Like, what was some of the negotiations you had to have to pay the price of global leadership?
Well,
This is this is something that's very close to heart, actually. So me and my better half, we started actually working in the same company, which is Unilever in India, long time ago. Until we started moving. Yeah. The company was very nice in actually moving us for the first few times. So to the UK, back to India, to China. And then, of course, you kind of start being in a situation where both careers can't happen in the same place because one can't probably report to the other and things like that. And we've been, I wouldn't want to use the word we. I'd probably want to use the word I. So I have been actually guilty of moving 8 times in my life.
Wow.
And on each and every one of those occasions, Shilpa actually moved by resigning from what she was doing in the country before that. Now, the reason I say it is because, and I'm extremely proud of it on her behalf, is that miraculously she moved to advertising and communications. And she does a Asia Pacific role for one of the media companies, Omnicom, if you know of them, you can. And she actually ended up learning Mandarin and ending up learning Russian to actually join media companies in those 2 countries and actually work there as head of strategy in both those places. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that it has happened so many times over. It also doesn't take away from the fact that, and this is perhaps a late realization. By the way, it wasn't forced or anything, so please don't get me wrong. I mean, that's, I've probably decided now it's time for me to be the trailing spouse. Yeah, and which probably means that diversity must be practiced at home. And therefore, it's she who moves first and not me. Even if that probably means that I do nothing for 6 months, just to sort of put in perspective. And, I think the price to pay was worth it. I think culturally, emotionally understanding different peoples across the world, etc. But the other factor is that we never actually told ourselves that we'll be migrants in any country. So we want to go and live in Mumbai eventually, much as we love Singapore and much as we loved Moscow or Shanghai or London or wherever. But I think the price to pay, just apart from the both of us, is what starts happening at this stage of our lives back home. And I think that's a very, very high price, which for me has been very personal for the past, perhaps about 24 months, because parents are getting older, they need you around, especially if you're part of a nuclear, smaller family. And that's the norm of the world today, unlike the joint families of the olden days. And you really start telling yourself whether you are there when they need you. And that's kind of very different from sort of flying to meet them once in a while. So I think that starts having an impact. I don't really know what is the eventual price for it. But I also strongly believe, I love your insight. Yeah, but I also strongly believe, and probably for the second time in the day, I'm probably going to be, or third time in the day, apart from your initial provocation, talking about AI as something that will eventually sort of be normalized. I will actually say that I think most people in this room, apart from really people who are half our age, and I'm sure there's some of them, I would say that the best times for globalization is actually behind us, not ahead of us.
True.
Yeah, and therefore, much as we might have liked all our expats live, and we might say actually sort of global leadership, I'm sitting actually and saying here there are parts of global leadership which I haven't liked, or which I regret, let's say, maybe 10%. I don't think that opportunity actually is going to be so massive in the next 20 years. Yeah, for all our next generation. I'm again saying something. Now, that doesn't mean jobs won't exist, but it probably means that countries are going to be looking at far more at people within their borders than from elsewhere. Relatively, there'll always be need for great people anywhere in the world. Yeah, but unfortunately, everyone is not equally skilled at everything in life. So I genuinely feel that our generation, which covers most of us in this room, had the best time in the past, maybe post-World War, to actually be globalized enough. And I think we should embrace these, sort of great days which happened upon us living in so many wonderful countries, including this one. That's
well said. Well said. Maybe the concept of price, is that the cost of it or the investment that you put into it? Personally, and back to what you were saying, I would do everything in the same way, even considering everything you said. And actually, to me, there are two key moments, two life stages where the price looks a bit higher. The first one is when you start a family, and there is a clear absence of balance in terms of the role of the father and the mother. And if someone has to, create the balance for the family to start, and someone will stay and work and the other one won't, it's still, the spouse that does the sacrifice. In my case, it was very much the case. It was a very conscious choice. It was never imposed. So it's also a partnership and a project that you build together. But that is painful as you go through it, because, you take big calls. My wife as well, she did the same education as mine. And, she had a great job, great opportunities, but there was a project that was that one. And so we went for it together. Second life stage is exactly what you said about having parents that start to have health conditions. And if you are 12,000 kilometers away, of course, it's you cannot be there in the next couple of hours. Now, of course, having considered all of that, I still think this is what you want to put into your life experience and working experience. And if that is the right kind of trade-off for you, then go for it. Because we only live once somehow. So whatever the choice you pick, you go with it, you go for it, and you accept, and you are aware of the fact that there will be those moments that create more tension, and you have to deal with them. You cannot pretend they are not there somehow. But overall, I consider myself, and I think as probably some of us here tonight, very, very lucky to have the possibility to have that kind of option as well. To have access to that kind of price is already a privilege.
So, just got conversations and trailing spouses. So let me start my story there. Firstly, the conversations, at least in our house, have always been, shall we do it? Okay, yes, let's move on. I don't know why, but it's never been a long drawn out conversation. It's always been like, here, there's an opportunity. Yes, no, fine, let's make it happen. So we've both been trailing spouses to each other. We started our career in Mumbai. And she was working with a bank at the time, and she had an opportunity to move to London. And we said, sure, let's go explore London. And we thought it'll always be like a 1, maybe 2-year gig, and we'll come back home, because we loved our life in Mumbai. 1 became 2, then it became 3, then we had our son, then we had a house, then we had a dog. And then so slowly you realize that 2-year project has now become like 17 years. And fast forward that to a few years back where, my wife for a number of years would complain about the banking industry in London. And she would keep saying, that's not the hub of banking. We should be in Dubai. We should be in Singapore. So I still remember like June of probably, I don't know, 22, 23, I got the opportunity and I was supposed to be filling up this form where it said, are you mobile? And before I kind of said yes, I still remember the HR person and my boss at the time had said, look, do not just tick something for the sake of it, because we've had so many cases where someone just ticks a box and then we say, okay, you know what, we're going to move you. And they say, no, I was just taking because I thought it'd help my promotion or like, so no, take your time, go speak with your family and truly decide if you want to move. So fine, I go back. I said, look, you've been complaining about London like forever. Here's the choice. So we kind of have a discussion, rank 1, 2, 3. I kid you not. Right from the day after, my wife was like, I don't want to leave London. It's beautiful. So anyway, we kind of moved to Singapore. I think the price, to be honest, was fine for all of us. The move, everything was easy. The one who actually paid the biggest price was our dog. Lockdown puppy, 6 years old now, Labrador. He was used to, swimming in cold lakes, rolling around frosted, I don't know, parks. And now we've kind of brought him into such heat and humidity. So I'm sure, like, if he could speak, he would be like using all the explicitives that he could at me.
But he still love you.
He still loves. But anyway, that's my story. We've had very short conversations. We've been trailing spouses to each other. And unfortunately, it's our dog who pays the biggest price of it all.
Well, look, I can't really add much more to what's already been said, but I think, being slightly philosophical about it to some degree is, you never really truly understand the causality of a choice at the time you make that choice. And that's the benefit of having experience. You look back in time and with hindsight when you've done slightly different things. And for me, for sure. And look, I look at my kids and I look at my family and I go, wow, they grew up there. They have had access to all the things that a boy from the north of England never had. And I think that's a real blessing. And that's kind of being a glass half full, albeit I am empty. I am super optimistic about life in that way. But I guess what I never really appreciated was how precious time was. And I think it's time with loved ones, with family, with parents that you just can never, ever get back again. So I think equally as well, having global roles, even though you move location, you might be on global calls with New York and working 24/7 or San Fran or so, being brutally tight with your time, which I now can choose to be, which I wasn't previously because I was pushing so hard, or we were pushing so hard as a family, where it's not just about being away from the mum, dad, grandparents. It's actually being in the same house with your kids and not seeing them for 24/7 because you're on calls from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So again, my viewpoint would be, I don't regret the choices we made because we made adult choices. We worked as a partnership. There are certain personal things I wish I was there when my mother died, as an example, which I couldn't be, that you always reflect upon. But I guess I would just be more brutal with my choice of time. And I can do that now because I'm at the latter end of my career. I don't really care as much as I used to do about what people think or where my career's heading because I've made my choices. But I think if there's anything I could teach a younger me, it would be really brutal where you invest your time.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much for really sharing so candidly. And yeah, I think we belong to the luckier generation, so to speak. Managed to go through so many different eras, whether it's new technology or just new way of looking at things. So really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we turn off and turn on again, Vincent?
The karaoke?
Are we doing Hey Jude again?